Hello, welcome back to Conquer Crochet. My name is Karen Stangroom, and in this video we're going to be talking all about stitch markers. What are they? Do I need them? And what alternatives could I use instead? So stitch markers come in all different shapes and sizes. They could have little charms on them, which could be made out of metal, they could be made out of glass beads, out of polymer clay, or you could just have something like a little bobby pin or even a piece of wool. So what's the point of a stitch marker? Let's go to my table and I'll show you. So when do we use stitch markers? Well, the first place I would recommend using stitch markers is at the start of your row. So after you've chained one and made your first stitch, grab a stitch marker and just pop it into the top of that first stitch. And then you can work all your way down the row. Do my chain, turn, do my first stitch and pop a stitch marker in. So I can crochet all the way down this row, and when I get here I'll know that that was my last stitch that I need to work into. So your counting and the stitch markers will help you keep your lines and your sides straight. Do your last stitch, take the stitch marker out, and then when you've done your first stitch on the next row, pop the stitch marker back in. So you basically work them up the rows each time. Another way to use your stitch markers is if somebody knocks on the door and you've got to stop doing your work, or if you have children or animals who like to play with your yarn, you can just pull your stitch out, grab a stitch marker, pop it around the loop, and that way then if someone does get hold of your yarn, it's not going to come undone. So that one's really useful. You may also have a piece of work that says you need to have right sides and wrong sides. You don't normally get that in beginner patterns, but you might. So you might want to pop a stitch marker on the right side so that you know that's the right side, that's the wrong side. So that could help you as well. Another place you might want to do this is when you're chaining. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to pop a stitch marker in number 10. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Pop a stitch marker in number 20. This is very useful if you've got a very long foundation chain to make, particularly if you get interrupted a lot, and you'll be able to go, okay, I know I've done 10, 20, 30, 40. If you know you're not going to be interrupted, then you don't need to do this, but if you've got to make a foundation chain of, say 100, then this can be a really useful way of just double checking without having to count all of your stitches, all of your chains from the beginning. So that's just a few ways of how you can use your stitch markers. So now we found out why we need stitch markers and how important they can be. Let's have a look at some of the designers of stitch markers that I particularly like. So one of the first shops I want to share with you is Chapel View Crafts, run by the lovely Cheryl. She sells all sorts of gorgeous things that you can have on stitch markers, jewellery. She makes little miniature things for dolls' houses and pictures. Absolutely lovely. So go and visit her website. That's chapelviewcrafts.co.uk, and she's based in Wales. So if we just pop to her stitch markers, and you can see she's got some lovely different cakes and crumpets and sweets and lots of really cute stitch markers which are ideal for giving as gifts, but also if you just want to buy that special treat for yourself. So there's lots and lots of different, I like the rainbow cake, lots and lots of different stitch markers there, all handmade in her studio. And if you go to her Instagram, which is Chapel View Crafts, I think, I'll double check that. I'll put the link in the description below for all of the shops and all of their Instagram and Facebook details. You'll actually be able to see on her page her actually making all the different cakes and things. It's quite fascinating to watch. So the next one I want to show you is Mrs. G Makes, the lovely Amanda. We've been friends online for quite some time. I am hoping that next summer we might actually get to meet in person, which is very exciting. So if you go to her Etsy shop, which is Mrs. G Makes, and she's also on Instagram as Mrs. G Makes, and she has a YouTube channel as well. So she has lots of lovely things on her site, all handmade, pouches and various stitch markers and things. There's a stitch marker club which you can subscribe to, which is a great way to build up your stitch marker collection. So if I just click on the stitch markers there, so she's got ones for keeping progress. I actually have the Union Jack and the Stars and Stripes. I bought that when I did my New York video, and lots of lovely stitch markers here. If I just click on the Stars and Stripes one, when you're choosing your stitch markers, and this is probably the same on all of the sites, you can choose your clasp style. So you can have lever arch, lobster claw and hoop if you're a knitter. Do not use hoops if you are crocheting because they will get stuck in the middle of your crochet. So the lever's the one I prefer because it really opens out wide and you can get it around if you're using chunkier yarns. The lobster claw, if you always do delicate things, then the lobster claw is fine. But this is a really great picture just to show you the different clasps that you can get. So can we have a little look? There we are. So one of the things I like about Amanda's stitch markers is she always puts the little beads on. They're not just sort of thrown on to your clasp. There's like nice little beads on there as well to make them look nice and pretty. And you can also get storage tins that you can keep your stitch markers in, which is always handy. Into rainbows and unicorns or witchcraft and wizardry, there will be a stitch marker out there for you. But what if you don't want to spend money on stitch markers? Let's have a look at some of the alternatives we could use instead. So you could just use a little bit of scrap yarn. I often keep all of my scraps, so sometimes I can just grab one of those and I can just thread that through and then I know where my stitch is. If you're worried about it, you could tie a little knot, not too tight, so that you could just snip it carefully off when you've finished. I would suggest doing it in a contrasting colour, otherwise you might end up cutting your actual work rather than your little stitch marker. But that is a cheap, easy way to make stitch markers. Alternatively, you could use a bobby pin or a hair grip and just slide that into your stitch, and that will hold safely, and because it's quite tight it's not going to come undone that easily. Lots of people have these just lying around their houses. You might have some in your makeup drawer or your hair drawer, so have a look and see whether or not you've got some bobby pins that you could use instead. So a favourite of offices everywhere, the Humble paper clip can also make a good stitch marker. If you just pull it out slightly, you should be able to thread through. The only thing I don't like about using these is they can be a little bit rough on the ends, so you could catch it on yourself or you could catch your yarn depending how delicate your yarn is that you're working with, which is why I prefer the bobby pin, because they've got those little protection things on the end that stop them hurting your head, where it's going to stop hurting your yarn. But nothing to stop you using the Humble paper clip. And if you don't want to spend a lot of money on stitch markers but you still like the idea of a stitch marker, you could buy little stitch markers like these ones. They come in a lot of different rainbow colours. You often get these ones free with magazines, so have a look and see what they have going on the front of magazines, because sometimes you can get some really good notions from those. This one's very much like a safety pin, and equally you could use a safety pin if you have one of those in your house as well. So lots of different alternative items that you could use as stitch markers. So hopefully you'll find something that will help you to keep your place, to remember what side you're working on, and to hold your yarn so it doesn't unravel when the children get hold of it, or our lovely pets. Hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. It is free and you can unsubscribe at any time. I'll pop 2 more videos on screen to help you on your crochet journey, and I will see you over there. Thank you so much for joining me on this one, and happy hooking!